So this week we are talking about polynomials. And if you took 104, you've seen some stuff about polynomials. And we did talk about polynomials in P.3 and P.4. We were multiplying them, adding them, and factoring them. This week we are now going to look at them graphically. So last week we started with functions and graphs, and the rest of the term, except for week 8, we're now going to be looking at these things in terms of graphs. So we're going to be looking at what they look like as a graph, how we can graph them, the different features of their graph. So that's basically the main point going forward for the rest of the term, is we're going to be focusing on the graph. So Desmos is your friend. So definitely use Desmos. It will make your life so much easier. So so we're going to be doing everything in Chapter 3. So Chapter 3 is polynomial functions. So 3.1 is quadratic functions and models. So a lot of that you've actually seen when we're solving quadratic equations. So some of that is going to be review, and then there's going to be some new things talking specifically about what the graphs look like. Then in 3.2, we're looking at polynomial functions of higher degree. So that's going to be degree of 3, 4, 5. We could go much higher than that. We usually don't. Then we're going to be talking about polynomial and synthetic division, and that is going to make 3.4 much easier, which is zeros of polynomial functions. And we have talked about zeros in the past. Zeros are basically the x-intercepts, but you can have complex numbers as your zeros. And then 3.5 is mathematical modeling and variation. And so that's a different type. It kind of seems, it's word problems, and it doesn't quite fit with the rest of the chapter. I don't know why they stick it there, because it doesn't really fit, but they do. And so it's there. We're gonna go through it. So that's the 5 sections. So where can you use this? So a lot of business applications actually use polynomials, especially if you are graphing trends in data, because a lot of data is not perfectly straight. It's going to go up and go down, and a lot of it you can use a polynomial to fit that data. Engineering uses anything that has curves we can model with a polynomial, and so roller coasters have polynomials, roads, when you have to model your curves and all that, that's involving polynomials. So if you have curves involved, polynomial equations and functions usually are involved. I did predicting traffic patterns. That's something that I did not know until I did some research. Economics uses polynomials, and that's closely related to business because you're modeling data that usually goes up and down. Medicine, you can actually do some modeling of bacteria. That was another one that I found in my research. And then physics is projectiles. And that last one we're going to look at with our discussion this week. So we're going to take a physics concept, but we're going to do the math behind it. So you don't have to worry about creating the equation. In physics, you create these equations. We're just going to solve the equation. So we're not going to take into account airspeed and all those other things to make it more physics-like. We're just going to solve it. So this week there's a lot of sections that we're starting to rely on, but the biggest things that we're going to be hitting again are you're going to be solving a lot of linear equations, you're going to be solving a lot of quadratic equations, you're going to be doing tons of factoring, and you're going to be doing graphing. So these are the same skills that keep popping up week after week after week. We're just using them in different contexts. So for this week, you've got your discussion, the ungraded practice assignment, the assignment, and then the quiz. So let's take a look at the discussion. And this is going to be another math-based discussion. So let's talk about the motivation behind this discussion. So a lot of sports we usually throw things or hit things. So, you know, you throw things if you are in football, and we hit things when we're in baseball or tennis. I guess you can consider soccer even hitting something if you hit it with your head. But a lot of sports involve a ball, basically. And whenever you model the movement of these things, especially if you're throwing or hitting them, that's actually a quadratic equation. And now I know that like the everyday person, you're watching these sports, you're not going to be doing these equations, but let's say you are a coach, or you're recruiting, or you're involved in the actual sport, then actually understanding the math behind these things and how that works helps, because that can help you recruit better players and analyze where people can improve, because there actually is math at work behind like the kicking of a football or hitting the baseball. There's actually a lot of math behind that, and you can analyze that. In fact, the whole movie Moneyball was all about statistics and analyzing all the data. So what we're going to do this week is we're taking the position equation from section 1.4. So that was on the week 3 assignment, there was a homework problem asking about that equation. So we're going to take that equation again, and we're going to model the height of a baseball when it's a pop-up. Basically, if you hit the baseball and instead of like actually making some distance, it just goes straight up and comes back down. This is the simplest type of equation that we could model. If you want to start throwing in distance, then you have to worry about the angle that it's hit, and then you have to start doing some physics stuff, and we're not a physics class, so we're just going to make the assumption that this goes straight up and comes back down. So it's a pop ball. And I actually found this article that was talking about the math behind it and how to catch these things, which I thought was really cool. And it was talking about how there is math that your brain is doing, but you don't realize it's doing it behind the scenes. And so your brain is actually calculating things when you're trying to catch these, and you just don't know it. So I thought that was really cool. It talks about the speed and whether things are increasing and decreasing. And so it uses a lot of the terminology we've learned so far. So maybe after this, probably tomorrow when I send out this PowerPoint, because Blackboard's being a little slow today at processing these videos. The one that I did at 6 still hasn't processed, so I can't share that one yet. So I probably can't share this till tomorrow, but I definitely recommend looking at that video or that link and reading it, because it's pretty interesting about how our brain does the math and we don't even know it. So we're basically just taking something in real life, and then we're going to look at the math behind it in a very simple situation where we're making assumptions. That's what mathematicians do. So there's very specific list of tasks for your discussion this week. And essentially, the first thing you need to do is actually figure out, you have to get some data. So again, we're looking at real data, just like we did with the taxi cabs, or when we were doing the businesses and we're predicting sales. So you need to first figure out at what height, if you hit a baseball, how high that's going to be. Usually, you do some crouching, and it's going to be maybe at about shoulder height, but you have to figure out how much you're crouching. So just an estimate. And then you also need to find out the average exit velocity. So there is a list in the discussion for you to click on, and hopefully if I can get this to actually click on the link, it will let me. It does not want me to click on it. So let's see, where is my browser? Okay, I'm in a different class. Let me just pull up our class, and I'll click on it directly from, whoops, too many things going on. I'm going to click on it directly from our class so that we can, so I'm going to go to the discussion and then go to week 5. Okay, so week 5, it has a lot more, and you can actually, it talks about the actual equation, the position equation, and if you really want to understand the physics behind it, there's this link on BrainFuse that you can read. I kind of do some explanation behind it, but this is the list. It says this list, so I'm going to click there. And so we want the average exit velocity. So that is the speed of the baseball after it has been hit. They also give you additional information here. They tell you how far it goes, the launch angle, average height, but those are all a different type of, like the launch angle and the height, those are different because that's if it goes different, actually, like, you know, travels across the field. Because we're looking at a pop fly, those numbers don't apply. What does matter is the exit velocity. That's going to be the speed at which it's hit. And so you're going to pick somebody off of this list. It's sorted by highest to lowest. If you want, you can just look for your favorite batter. You can pick like a team. You can even, if you want, like last year's numbers. But this is, you can go into more detail if you want. But I mean, baseball is great because they give you all these numbers. So let's see. I'm going to just, if I click, you can even get some information about the player, and then they give you all this more information. But what we really want is exit velocity. So you're just looking for this number here, 93.4 miles per hour. This one's 97. The top, they're all in the 90s, basically. Good baseball player hits, you know, like 90 miles per hour. Because basically, when you toss the ball is at like, or I shouldn't say toss. When you pitch a ball, it's like in the 90s. Sometimes they go up to over 100 miles per hour. And then when you hit it, there's not a lot of friction. That's why they try to make the bat really smooth. So it's going to have almost the same speed after you hit it. So you're going to look at that number. So going back to the discussion here. So you're going to pick a number off that list, and then you're going to pick a height based off of how high you think you'd be off the ground. Some people do it off of the strike zone, which is a great way to do it, to figure out how high the strike zone is. I don't know off the top of my head how high that is, so I'd have to do some research. Then you need to convert that exit velocity to feet per second, because our equation, the position equation, works specifically in feet. And they're giving us the exit velocity in miles per hour, so we have to convert. So if I go back to the web here, what I usually do is I just go to Google, and actually, because it's just Google right here, you can just type in convert, and let me zoom in so you can, why is it, seems like there it is. Okay, I'm like, where is my, oh, I was hoping it would zoom in on the top. It's not zooming in the right spot that I wanted to zoom in. But anyway, so like convert, I'm 95 miles per hour. So I just did MPH 2 feet per second. And you hit enter. And let's see if I can zoom in here. And you can see that Google will do it for you. And then it actually tells you what the formula is. So you don't have to do it by hand. Let's say if I had somebody that was 92 miles per hour, it automatically updates it. If I had one of them that was like 97. So you can just use Google to do this for you so that you have the right number. And then this is the number that you're going to be using, because our equation is in feet, so our units have to match. So you need to convert your feet per second, or your miles per hour, to feet per second. And then you're going to plug your numbers into the position equation. So you actually use the same equation, and you plugged in velocity and height in the week 3 assignment. So you're doing the same thing. You're plugging in the velocity, which we just found and converted to feet per second, and then you're plugging in that height. So all of that is nothing much new that you've done. Then you need to find the maximum height, which is the vertex. And that is a term you learn about in 3.1, and there's a formula on finding the vertex. And then you're going to find when the ball hits the ground, which are the zeros. And that's when the equation is equal to 0. And to solve a quadratic equation equal to 0, especially when you have decimals, you're going to have to use the quadratic formula. So you're going to have some math to work out. Definitely make sure you're showing all of your steps, showing how you're getting your work for all these things. And then once you've done that, there's a reflection part, of course. And I talked a little bit about how we're ignoring the angle. And so one of the things to reflect on is, what role do you think the angle of the ball would play in affecting the outcome? Obviously, it's going to have some difference in your height, but does it also change when the ball will hit the ground? So that's sort of reflecting on, okay, in the real world, we do have an angle. We don't hit it straight up most of the time. How would that change our height and how long it takes for it to actually get to the ground, assuming that nobody catches it? So that's what we're doing for the discussion prompt. I actually have a few other videos here, so when you check out the PowerPoint tomorrow, I would definitely watch these videos. The first one goes into specifically quadratic equations and football, and talking about the kickers and how they're trying to aim their kick a certain way, and so it talks about the formulas behind that, and that one goes a little bit more into the physics behind it because you do have to take into account the angle. And then there's another one about sports in general. And then I found one that's about the maximum height of a ball. So that's going to be very similar to what you have to do for the discussion. So those should also be helpful for you. And then basically to lay this out, start with explaining your situation. So make sure you tell me who your player is, the mile per hour number, the feet per second number, the height, give me that information. Make sure you give the equation with your input and output variables. So don't plug in anything for t. You want to actually have your equation. Then you're going to use your equation to find the maximum height. So that's coming from 3.1. Use the equation to find when it hits the ground, which comes from 1.4, and then you have a reflection at the end after you've looked at your results. And then when you're applying to people, you can compare your equation to their equation because you're probably going to pick different players. You're going to have different heights, so you're not going to have the same exact work. You can discuss what factors contribute most to the differences in your values for the vertex and the zeros. So say if your maximum height is higher, what parts of your equation you do think made that difference. And then also you can think about what they said about how the angle matters, and then you can discuss that as well. And then if you have anything else relevant to talk about the math and baseball, that is cool as well. So that's the discussion for this week. We try to do a variety of different types of discussions so that everybody can find something that they might enjoy. And we usually have a lot of people that maybe don't feel like they're going to be doing math in their job or anything, but they really enjoy seeing how it pertains to sports because they're really into sports. So this is sort of a different perspective on how math shows up in the real world, even if you aren't sitting here actually solving the quadratic equations. So do you guys have any questions on the discussion? Okay, if you guys think of anything, of course, you can ask me. Excuse me. Moving on to the assignments. So you've got your ungraded practice assignment, and so it's a selection of problems from Chapter 3. We didn't assign everything for the review exercises because some of them are harder than others and you don't really need to know. So just, you don't have to do all of them. It's just a selection. Oops, I was changing that to week 5 and apparently I forgot to hit backspace on my week 4. So the week 5 assignment, I do want to particularly talk about the week 5 assignment because this is going to be very different from what you've done before. So I'm going to actually pull up the assignment. And I do have, if you haven't noticed, when you hit assignments, I have these templates. Oh, good, it's still zoomed in. So the week 5 assignment is 45 weeks of algebra. Yeah, don't worry. It's not actually 45 weeks of algebra. So the week 5 assignment here is basically 2 questions, but question 1 has lots of parts. And what we're doing here for question 1 is we're analyzing a polynomial. And we are basically taking everything we've learned in Chapter 3 and applying it to one problem. So these are step-by-step. Find the degree, give the maximum number of turning points, how many zeros does it have, use the leading coefficient test, list all the possible zeros. There's a lot of theorems and definitions this week. So there's the rational zero theorem. use Descartes' rule of signs, and you have to do A through F first before you go to the factoring. Because in order to factor something that has a 4 in the exponent, you have to basically start making guesses. And so you use the information from basically parts D, E, and F to make educated guesses. So this is where a lot of critical thinking and problem solving comes into play, because that's the only way to factor this, is to make guesses. And on a calculator, on a computer, they basically try every single possibility to make it work. But you know, we aren't computers, so we have to start using educated guesses. And so this is where you're really learning that problem solving and analyzing, and like, what does that number mean in critical thinking. So you have to do the first parts in order to do part G. And then you have to do G in order to do H. And then for I, where it says sketch a graph, you can just include the graph on Desmos, a picture of it. So you don't have to do it by hand. You can graph it on Desmos. But you want to make sure that your graph corresponds to your previous answers. And then 2 goes with the very last section, the variations. So all of this goes with the first 4 sections of chapter 3. And I just want to make sure that you guys are aware. So I'm going to go to our videos for week 5. So tomorrow I'm doing a video on 3.1, but this video on 3.4, zeros of polynomials, I basically walk through an example of everything you have to do for the assignment. It's not the same equation, but I do everything you need to do for it. So I would definitely make sure that you watch this zeros of polynomial video before you do the assignment, and then keep it handy as you work through the assignment, because I will walk through all the same steps, just with a different equation. So that will be very helpful for you for the assignment for this week. And now moving on to the quiz. So, you know, we had the midterm last week, so now we're back to the 10-question multiple choice. So I just want to make sure that you show all of your work so that you can submit it to the Dropbox. Make sure that your work is clearly labeled with each number, because otherwise we can't really give you partial credit if we don't know where each question is. So it's fine for you to rewrite your work to organize it better after you take the quiz, but make sure you're turning in something where at least we can find each question so that we can give you partial credit. And just as a reminder, this is required to turn this in. So if you don't turn it in, you will get a penalty on your quiz, but that penalty is removed as soon as you turn in your work. So you need to turn in the work so that we can give you partial credit, and then that way your penalty is removed, because it is required, and so we have to penalize you in some way. And then you'll get points that are added. The score in the Dropbox will tell you how many points you've earned for that particular quiz, and then it's already added on to the score as well. So if you go back and review your quiz, you'll see you'll have partial credit on some questions. Most people, so I was looking at the week 2 and week 3 quizzes, and the average points earned was about 5 points, which is about 5%. So that means if you had a 60, you're going up to 65%. And that does make a big difference. It really is a big difference. It may not sound like a difference, but that's a big difference. And that's an average, which means some people got lower than that, some people got higher than that. I actually saw one person that got 20 points from their work because they were really close, but they had small errors. So it's really to your benefit to turn in your work, because if you're one of those lucky people, that can make a huge impact on your grade to increase it by 20 points. That's awesome. So this quiz is on the week 4 material. Now that you've had a chance, I know that one of the graders has already finished off the week 4 assignment, so you can already start looking at your feedback. The other 2 graders have not finished that yet, so some of you may not have your feedback yet. But once you get your feedback, that can help you study for the quiz. The quiz is going to be on function notation, combinations and compositions, analyzing functions, like finding the domain and the zeros. And since we're doing the zeros again this week, that will be reinforced. graphing functions, function transformations, mathematical models, and inverse functions. So basically all the week 4 stuff. People always struggle with transformations. I saw that on the discussion this week. People really struggling to understand what a transformation is and what it means. So a lot of these links, these IXL links, are specifically on transformations. And then there's a lot of them about, or a couple of them about interpreting a function and interpreting a graph and understanding what it means, basically. Because that's the other thing people struggle with, was what does this actually mean once you've done the math? The chapter 2 pre and post tests on the textbook's website should help you study. And then, of course, reviewing the week 4 assignment, make sure you understand where you went wrong, doing problems similar to that sort of thing. That should help you study for the quiz. And now, finally, at the end, our suggested schedule. So let me zoom in here. So for the discussion, you can get started on the discussion right away. You can pick your player, you can get your speed in feet per second. You can even do the 0 for the find the vertex. Those don't have to be vertex first, then zeros. You could do the zeros first, then the vertex. Because for the zeros, all you need to do is the quadratic formula. So you guys know how to do that already. And I'm making sure that tomorrow's live session at 7 is going to be on 3.1 so that I can provide you some examples of the kinds of things you need to do for the discussions. So that will be very helpful as well if you come to tomorrow's live session or watch the recording, because I'll be doing similar problems and showing you how all that works. So you can get the discussion done by Friday. And then that gives you plenty of time to read and reply to other people, see if I've asked you any questions, see if other people have found like errors or given you suggestions, and then you can correct your work. You're always welcome if you find a mistake to go back and correct it. That's part of what the discussion is for learning and learning from your mistakes. And so correcting what you've done will help you get a better grade as well. So you're welcome to do that. So definitely pay attention to what people have said, because they may have found little things you missed. Sometimes, like, you miss a exponent or something like that. Out of the videos in the weekly content, the videos go with 3.1 and then 3.4. I definitely recommend watching my live sessions. I pointed out I have ones on 3.3 and 3.4, and then I'm doing one tomorrow on 3.1. So I don't have for 3.2, so you will have to watch the textbook videos and read that, and I don't have one on 3.5, but most of the material this week there will be videos for, so I would make those your priority. And then I've mapped out which review problems go with each section, and there's about 10 sections or questions for each day, so that's not too bad. There's a lot more in 3.4, but 3.4 has a lot of material in it, so that's why there's more there. And then, as I said, for the assignment, you basically need to do everything in order. 1A is actually from section P.3. It is mentioned again in 3.2, but if you don't, you can go back to P.3. They actually taught it there as well. And then B, C, and D come from 3.2, and then everything else in question 1 has to come from 3.4, which is why I recommend watching that 3.4 video. And then question 2 comes from 3.5. And then, I definitely recommend studying for the quiz, and don't do it all at once, do it in little chunks. So that's basically everything you need to know for this week. I know it's a lot. Of course, you can watch this video again, especially before you do your discussion. You may want to rewatch this just on the video part or the discussion part. Do you guys have any questions for me? Well, I don't see anybody typing anything.
I'm sure we'll have questions as we start trying to do it.
Yes, that's always how it goes. You always end up having questions when you start trying to do it. So of course you guys are welcome to contact me. Grantham is closed Monday for Veterans Day, so I will not be having my office hours that day. Just we're done not supposed to work on holidays. That's like my one day off the week that I got since I usually work every other day. Um, but if you send me a message on Remind, I'll probably still be checking the Remind because that's on my phone. So even though, I won't be checking my email, I'll be checking the Remind. But yes, you're always welcome to contact me if you have questions. I love interacting with students. It's much better than me just sitting on the computer all day. So, all right. Well, I guess I will let you guys go. I will go. It looks like my video from 6 p.m. still has not processed. So I have no hope of this video being saved through Blackboard tonight. So it will definitely be showing up tomorrow. But I'll try to get that up first thing tomorrow morning so that you guys can get started. So thank you so much for joining me. And I hope you guys have a great night. And hopefully I see you tomorrow at 7. All right. Bye, guys.